This podcast is sponsored by Tusk, an open source non-ICO crypto project powered by community. Check them out on the web at tusk.network. That's TUSC.network. The Rob McNealy program is the nexus of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and entrepreneurship. Now, welcome to the program. Hey folks, Rob McNealy here, and today I'm excited. I am talking to Richard Carthon. He is the founder and host of the Cryptocurrent podcast. He is a longtime community member in the crypto space, and I really like his take on a lot of different issues. So I think we're going to have a really good show today. So Richard, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Appreciate you having me today, Rob. We had before getting on this, just various conversations. I think there is plenty of topics that we can cover, and it's just it's really cool to see all the projects that you have going on and your involvement in the space, and really excited to be sharing some of what I got going on too with your audience. So looking forward to it.
Well, I appreciate that. I actually like talking to other podcasters, and the main reason that is because I talk to a bunch of people and talk to a lot of projects. I'm also involved in a project, but then you talk to lots of projects, and we talk to different ones, and then we compare notes. Right. And I think, the cool thing is and really why I like doing this program is because I get to speak to lots of really smart people, and I like being the dumbest guy in the room, not the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, I heard that. I mean, when I look back on when I originally started Cryptocurrent, it was to surround myself with thought leaders in the space, but then not only just educate myself, but to educate everyone else, right? And I feel that the best way to learn is from people who can break it down for you. So anything new or anything that causes change, there's friction, and there's like a resistance to wanting to learn, and just be like, oh, that's too tough, or get out of here. I don't want to talk about this, right? But when someone sparks your curiosity, when someone says something that's like, I haven't thought about it like that, or I could do something with that, it just opens the doors to so many possibilities that before A, weren't even on your mind, but then two, that just open themselves in a way that you like, I want to go deeper in this and find a way to get involved. So I agree, man. It's cool to talk to very intelligent people, passionate people, and people who really want to go deeper on what it is that they're working on, and it's exciting.
So how'd you get into this space? How did you get into doing the crypto stuff? Not just the podcast, but what got you interested in this area?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been an entrepreneur basically my entire adult life, and I was working at this artificial intelligence company, and the first day on the job, my boss comes up and says, "Hey, what do you know about Bitcoin?" I was like, "What's that?" Right? And he's like, "Trust me, you want to look into it." And so I did, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't I learn about this earlier?" So like, I was a late bloomer. I first learned about this January 2018, right? And the first thing that came to me was, one, this has been around for almost a decade. Why am I just now hearing about this? So what does that say about my circles that I'm in? But then two, even in those circles, who is really acting in trying to dive and be a person that can be a reliable source to educate me on this? So in 2018, when I first got into it and I was trying to educate myself, I went to all these YouTube channels and these web forums and all this stuff, and everything was very technical. Everything was very like either pie in the sky, get rich quick, or like super, super technical on here's how blockchain works, here's how hard forking is, here's this white paper. And I was just like, I just want someone to like give this to me straight, give this to me very simply, and like do it in a really cool and like compelling way. And I was like, I just want to talk to these people. I was like, I might as well like create a way to share it. And so that's when the concept of Cryptocurrent came about. And it's been amazing to be able to communicate with so many different thought leaders, and then like even today, like being able to speak with you, like it is such a easy way to talk to very intelligent people who can not only speak to several different topics, but speak very intelligently to them, but then can also like challenge you in ways to continue to expand your knowledge and to give you a new perspective on something that you might have felt very differently about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think part of the problem you just illustrated, like with people, speaking in technoese, right, is a function that so many crypto projects are really just developer led. Yep. Or super developer heavy. And a lot of times they don't understand how to speak to normal people. And I don't mean that in a bad way, right? With like our Tusk project, I'm focused on, we're marketing to, I would say for the most part, a pretty low tech industry. I don't go in and talk about censorship resistance and all this. I don't even talk about, think about that. We can get into all that stuff, but here's the thing that people don't even understand. How do you explain a decentralized organization to people that don't understand? And this is how I do it, right? If I'm talking to like a gun retailer about Tusk, I say this. I don't say we're a decentralized project. What I say is this is how I say it. We're kind of like we're like a nonprofit, kind of a cross between a nonprofit and a co-op.
Yeah.
Oh, they understand that right away.
Levels of connection.
And I don't lead with all this, technologies. I say 0.5% transaction fee, no chargebacks, and you get your coins instantly deposited in your wallet, so you don't have to wait for an ACH. So it improves your cash flow. Guess what? I don't have retailers say no to that.
Yeah.
On its face.
And that's what you need, right? When you're speaking, and especially with any company that you have, and this is definitely speaking to our entrepreneurial background, but when you're going to pitch anything, the first thought in anyone's head is no. Like whatever you're trying to sell me, just no. Just off the bat, right? Is no. And so how do you break down those guards? The first thing is through effective communication, and it is making sure that whatever you're trying to explain is very clear and that it not only just concise, but I can understand it, comprehend it, and then make an intelligent decision. If I don't understand anything that you're saying, we're done talking. Like there's nothing for me to think about because I can't even relate to what's going on. And what I think was happening initially in the 2018 ICO boom and all this money flooding in the market, and we're at the top of where Bitcoin was before everything started coming down, and you saw all these projects coming in that were they weren't building for the future, they were building for the here and now, and how can I make a ton of money really quick. And they were just putting all this technical legal jargon and these white papers to sound really cool, like because the hardest thing about anything in any industry when you're communicating with people is that you want to sound smart and intelligent, but you also you don't want to seem like you don't know what you're talking about. And so if you're in this crypto blockchain space, you put in all these super technical words and these super whatever to make yourself sound like you know what's going on. But if you can't break it down to me or your normal person or someone that's fresh in or whatever, we're never going to connect, and we're never going to be able to get to that next step in moving forward together. And so that was really one of the things that resonated me when I first got into this, and I really wanted to just break that down and start bridging the gap for all these thought leaders to be able to effectively communicate what they're working on so that people can understand it and decide if they want to get behind it or at least share that project with other people.
Well, I think you touched on a real, point about communication, right? And I think there's a couple sayings out there. Is it, do you want to be rich or do you want to be right? And in the marketing world, that's very common. And I think this is a problem that smart people often have, right? Is that especially when it comes to marketing, especially tech people. So I see this a lot around technical people that are smart, and I've been around a lot of smart tech people, so I can see it. But what ends up happening is they want to market to people in a way that they feel is respectful, but basically they want to be marketed in a way that they want to be sold personally. The problem is that really, really smart technical people are not the normal buyers out there in the world. Yeah. And how they want to be bought and sold is not correct. Or, how, they want someone to sell something to them. And I think they make that mistake a lot, and it gets them mad. Like, I don't want this, and you hear this a lot. You're around tech people all the time, right? And you're in your day job too, and as an entrepreneur, and I have been as well. And so, part of the problem is you see a lot of developers, they hate salespeople. They straight up hate them. Right. And they're like, oh, that guy's so full of crap, or that guy is just blah, 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 blah. And guess what? Some salespeople are full of crap, but you also have to get people emotionally excited about your product or service. And sometimes it's hard, right? Tech stuff's not, if I was going to try to sell you Visa, right? How sexy is that? It's not, it's just not, and the same thing with crypto. For the most part, crypto is not sexy. It shouldn't be sexy. If you think about it, it shouldn't be. Yeah. It should be utilitarian. Yeah. And I think that a lot of us miss that communication piece. And I think that, hopefully more projects like what we're doing and podcasts like what you and I are doing will help change that over time.
No doubt. And it's been interesting over the years I've been doing this as well, with some of the earlier guests that I've gone on versus some of the newer ones, and just understanding also the flow of conversation of sometimes when people come on, they know their product or project and everything extremely well, or they know a certain aspect of something like DeFi or stable coins or accounting on the blockchain, or what does it mean to do a fork on whatever, and like they can go really, really deep and be very like technical and very knowledgeable on the subject. But what people want to hear and what people resonate is passion, is that human element of like, when you speak about a thing, does it like excite you? Like, why should I be excited about when you're speaking to me about this thing? And what I've learned is to try to bring that out of people when they're speaking, because I have that level of connection with you to where now when we're speaking, I'm locked in. Like, I want to hear what this person has to say next, because I can feel the energy coming from what they're talking about. Because you can listen to very, very, very high in the sky conversations that like are probably highly intelligent and are solving a problem, and you're like, wow, these people are super smart, but like they're speaking French, they're speaking Japanese. What am I doing here? Because like one of the first conferences I've ever went to, like some of the conversations even on the stages, I was just like, how do I even get involved in this space? Like they're speaking a foreign language right now. And as you can start peeling back those layers and just getting people to break things down at their base, because a lot of projects and these developers as well, they can speak to the technicalese of it, but they can't at face value. I was like, tell me like in a 10-second pitch, what is your product? What do you do? Who's your ideal customer? And a lot of them, through our conversations, over their head, it's just like they start to freeze, because they've never just broke it down so simply. And it's amazing how when you just simplify things, how much more easily and freely you can speak about something and get more people to buy in.
And here's the downside of that, and I think this is also part of it. The simpler you can refine it, the easier it is to critique. And I think some people fear that. Like, let's just, I could pick apart, I pick on DeFi stuff sometimes, right? And because I think there's I have some concerns about some of the DeFi stuff, but you're like, some of these schemes, like yield farming and some of these other things, they're so complicated. Like, and in fact, the developers themselves have a hard time explaining what they're doing. And I'm like, so you created a token out of nothing. Somebody else gives you this token and you hold it, and then you give them this other token and they cash it out, and you're just trying to explain. You're like, and then I just come back and like, and I always, I like I said, I like to be the dumb guy, and I have trust me, I surround myself with dumb or smart people. I'm the dumb guy around everyone. I want to be the dumb guy. And I was like, okay, so who in the real world does this? Like outside of crypto, can you give me examples of where this is or where this exists, this model that you're creating?
Right.
And they're like, well, no, I don't. Explain to me. Give me an example. Is there a bank that I do this at? And it's funny how quickly some of those, these really complicated schemes break down.
Yeah.
When you ask these really basic questions. And I always take that as a red flag, right? Because I'm a simple guy. And there's a fundamental reason for this. Even with language, okay, I'll diverge. I got a little story. So, authors, if you look at some of the most successful books in the world in history, like in literature, in history, what you'll find is there's been some studies done on some of the most successful books in history were written at very low levels of education levels. And so meaning that the vocabulary, just think of it this way, the more popular books use smaller words, more common words for things. I saw a thing and it was like Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea was written at like a 4th grade level.
Yeah.
And no, most people would be offended by that if you say that, but there's a very practical reason for that. The simpler the understanding required, or the lower the education level required for someone to enjoy your work as an author, as your book, the more people, the bigger the market there is for that book.
Right.
So if you write a book that only people with PhDs in biochemistry can understand, your market is limited to people that have an understanding of biochemistry that also want to read your book.
Exactly.
It makes the market smaller.
Yeah.
And so I always think I go back to market sizes. Okay. I always try to break things back down. So help me understand what problem you're solving, and then how many people can you potentially solve that problem for? And then how do you get that solution to those people's problems in front of them? And you would see a lot of times, even with crypto, a lot of this stuff breaks down. I remember, and things are changing in this industry, but I remember when I went to the first Miami blockchain conference I went to a couple of years ago. That was like January or February in 2018, right after I got into crypto. I went to that conference.
Yeah.
And I was very new to crypto, and I'm still suspicious of crypto, but some of the stuff of crypto, but I was going and talking to all these projects, and we'd already had a project started too. But I started saying like, well, we're doing this, and this. And I'm like, so you're making Uber. So basically someone was making a blockchain based Uber. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that's interesting. What do you do differently? Well, we don't take as high of a fee. Okay, but okay, so Uber takes a high fee, yeah. So explain to me, you don't think Uber offers value to their drivers or to their customers? Because they wanted they basically make a decentralized type of Uber thing. I'm not gonna say who it was, but and it's funny because I was talking to the developers on this, and they couldn't answer basic questions. They had not thought out the business piece of this. They hadn't talked to their customers or potential customers for this. And I just said, I don't understand the market. What problem are you trying to solve other than a little lower fee? But you're also offering a lot less support, and you're not offering any marketing. And to me, I saw that as a big drawback. And I think this is the problem with a lot of these tech people, is that they're missing that whole understanding of what's happening on the other side.
And this is what's interesting about what is going on in the space right now, and where I think this next decade of where we're headed in the crypto blockchain space is very exciting. So you have a lot of these projects who basically went through initial boom, and if they're still around, basically they're trying to build something to last, right? And so now you're starting to get these projects who are a little bit more funded, and if they're not a little bit more funded, they have a little bit more well-rounded groups and team that is building it, and you're starting to get more marketing and sales focused people to get in it, to figure out the business model of how do we become sustainable. And then with that, what you're seeing is more people trying to figure out adoption. So what is the biggest hurdle for any new person coming into crypto and blockchain space, right? The first one is just basic understanding of what is Bitcoin, what drives its value, what are the 5 pillars, what are the things that make it distinct, right? What gives it its value? And then blockchain, the underlying technology, what is it? Just give me those two basics, right? And after you break that down, and they can understand that at its core, it's okay, if I'm going to use this in my everyday life, you don't necessarily need to know that. You just need to know that it works. So right now, I don't necessarily need to understand how it all works on the back end. When I go to a gas station and I put my Visa in, I get my gas and I dip out. I don't need to know the technology and everything that's going on the back end. It works. And what I think a lot of projects are finally starting to put their attention towards is, how do I just get this to work without the end user having to understand everything that's going on? And right now, that is the absolute hurdle for anybody new in the crypto space, is you need someone to hold your hand to get started. Basically, point blank, period. You are going to have to educate yourself a little bit. There's nothing intuitive about coming into this space right now. When you think about Apple and what made them so successful, especially with the iPhone boom and everything else, is you can pick up this phone, not know anything about a phone, and clearly understand how to use it, right? You can give grandma an iPhone, she'll figure out how to communicate and do everything that she needs to. With crypto right now, it's not grandma proof. It is not millennial proof. You're not going to get someone just my age or younger that's going to come on initially in the crypto space and just know what's going on. They're going to have to watch some videos, listen to some speakers, do whatever to get started. And one of the points that I really want to drive home right now, when you're communicating this to your potential companies or your projects or whatever you're working on, right? In your business, you just need to be able to be thoughtful in your communication. And what is it, your value proposition, and like how do you get this to more people, and how can anyone come on and use it without you having to hold their hand? Yes, initially right now you're gonna have to hold their hand, and that's fine. People understand like that's the friction that's there right now. But if you can do it a little bit cooler, or a little like you're a little bit more friendly, or whatever that like extra whatever that you do to like make me feel comfortable and confident when I'm trying your thing, that's what's going to separate you right now. But of course, as this continues to come on, if I hand you this thing and I can just use it without you having to explain anything, you've won. And I think the companies that are building that right now, oh my gosh, whenever like mass adoption truly does eventually come, you're going to just moon, because you've already built that infrastructure. And so it's been really interesting to talk to some of the different types of people in this space who do have that in mind, and just how they communicate is just different.
Well, let's take it back. Like, I liken it to command line interface, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you go through and people are like, oh, well, I always say, it's hard. You're not, this is what I say, and people get pissy, but I say, look, you're not going to get mass adoption without mass marketing.
Yep.
And I'm old enough to remember when the World Wide Web came to being and became popular. And, I'm old enough to remember that AOL was probably one of the biggest drivers of mass adoption of email on the internet. And that was because they sent out millions and millions and millions of CDs that were easy for people to use and get on.
For free.
And
There you go.
and there's no analog yet for crypto to do that.
No.
And abstraction, what you're talking about is we need good abstraction. And really, this shouldn't be complicated. There is some complications from getting apps into the app store, right? Like with wallets and things like that. But for the most part, it shouldn't be that complicated. This stuff is not that complicated. It shouldn't be, but it still is. And I do appreciate that, for instance, recently that the banks are now allowed to do custody of assets. And I've heard a lot of people that are really pro decentralization get pissy about it. And I said, to me, banks being allowed to custody, virtual assets is probably one of the most bullish things I've heard. And this is why. I don't think most people are comfortable with or responsible enough to have their entire 401k savings, life savings, and have the keys for that, where they could lose their keys and lose that. I don't think most people want that. And I don't think most people can handle that responsibility, to be honest. And I'm not picking on people, but I've seen developers lose their keys and lose hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of crypto just in my own circle. Like I've known 2 developers to lose their keys for wallets. One from a technical crash, one from just not, trying to play some games and doing some other stupid stuff. And I just don't believe, and if you think about it, it's one thing you got a $5 free wallet, paper wallet from somebody, right? And you lose, who cares? But can you imagine this? Imagine someone who's worked 30 years and saved up $500,000 in their 401k or IRA or $1 million, right? And now they moved it all to a self-directed IRA that put it all into crypto, and they lose their keys. Think about that. Don't tell me that's not going to happen either, because I've seen it happen. I know someone that's lost over $200,000 because he lost his keys doing something stupid.
Oh, I've heard of a business right now that's getting like put up, and like that's all they focus on, right? It's like custody, just to make sure like having like lawyers and stuff put in place to what happens if you die? Like, let's say you set all this up and like you don't have like a second key that you've put in like a PO box somewhere that's just chilling. So if with certain instructions, like on my death, here's my key, go reveal this, liquidate immediately, give it to so blah blah blah. Like some people aren't even thinking that far ahead, and like that's like to truly like if you're gonna set this up like as a asset that you're hedging against whatever and like just a long-term play, those are the kinds of like things down the road you got to think about, and I think a lot of people aren't. And it's necessary, and we're not there yet, right? So from a separate thing that I think is going on in the crypto space that is starting to evolve more is the operational piece of it. And I use this reference multiple times in my podcast, and I'm going to use it here. And for the last 10 years, for the first decade, there's a bunch of islands being built, right? Island over here, hey, I have the best stablecoin ever, come play with me. Hey, this one over here, I have the best blockchain that you can build all your crypto on top of, come play with me over here. Hey, I have the best DeFi company ever, you should come over here. And right now what we need aren't another island, we need bridges. We need bridges that are here that are connecting all of these really cool projects so that they all play together. So I don't need to go play on these different islands, I can come to this interface and just keep on riding the bridge all the way around so that everything works. And from the operational piece, whoever's able to figure that out and do it in a very, very clean, effective, and friendly way, I think they are going to just lead the charge for everything to come, right? So, like, for example, for right now, a lot of people that initially come into the crypto space, most of them go through Coinbase. Like, calling it is what it is. A lot of them are going through Coinbase. And if Coinbase were to start allowing options so that with any and everything that you want to do, you can purely do it from that platform, they have their foot in the door and can just blow things open. But right now, I'm sure that's something on their roadmap, but like there are a ton of other projects that are kind of trying to do it. But again, it's still so early. We are so early. Like everything in this in these opportunities right now is, if you can build the groundwork right now and like have that focus in mind, like you're looking at the next 10 to 20 years of what you're trying to build, you can like not just dominate this space, but you can make something so powerful that is international and limitless, right? Like, and a lot of projects where people build, they build it for a country or they build it for a certain area. This has no limits. And like that is what one quick story, what made me like all in, what made me come all in to crypto, my turning point. I had a friend who works in the oil and gas, and he worked in the Philippines, and when he got paid, he would send his money back to his family in California. But when it happened, between trading fees and time, he'd lose 40% from going from the Philippine money to US dollars, and then doing the wire transfers and everything else and fees and all that. 40% of his money gone just instantly. And it would take, I think, like 7 business days. He then started just switching everything to Bitcoin and sending it, and it would take a couple of minutes, and it would only cost a couple dollars. I was like, I'm sold. That makes so much sense to me. That makes, you don't need to tell me anything else. Like, I'm in. I need to learn more. And I think as there's so many use cases like that where people are using cryptocurrency and blockchain applications like it, that as it becomes easier to use and see those international use cases, like again, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, I think remittances are really a huge opportunity, but it's going to take some time. I mean, I saw this, I was living in Europe briefly in the 90s, and it was interesting because we already had, well, dial-up was, the big thing there, and we were just starting to get cable modems, right? It was high speed was just limited at that point in the late 90s. And I thought it was interesting though, but cell phones were a lot less common. But in Europe where I was, they didn't have landline. Everyone had a landline, but they didn't have data lines. But right. Their cell phone usage, their mobile phone usage jumped. They leapfrogged the United States. So in the late 90s, everybody had a mobile phone where I was, versus in the States, they didn't. And I think you're going to see that with like blockchain, right? Because blockchain does, again, outside of Western countries, I think right now blockchain solves a lot of problems, more so for people. You have different regulations, different taxing pieces to it. It does end a lot of friction. And I think, unfortunately, I think the US is hamstringing itself from a regulatory standpoint, and since we don't have as big of a problem, I think we're going to lag in the United States from crypto innovation, which I don't think is a good thing overall. But I can see that, and you saw that with the World Wide Web too. We were early, but other people, because of mobile devices, they got so much more advanced on the mobile phone infrastructure than we did. And so I think it's interesting, and I think the United States need to figure this out. Where do we want to be? Do we want to be a really competitive player on a global level, or do we not? Right. And then on the developer side, dude, you got to get out of the mindset of Linux desktop, right? Command line interface. People, let's just be honest. Windows won that game for a reason. I like Linux. Don't get me wrong. I have a Linux laptop, and so I understand command line stuff. But I started on DOS. But the honestly is, you're not going to get mass adoption of command line interface. It's just not going to happen, right? It's just too much overhead and baggage, and I don't think everybody thinks like that. And let's be honest, command line interfaces is really similar to crypto, right? It's not forgiving. You make one so for instance, think of it this way: command line interface, right? You make one space wrong, one minus sign wrong, one exclamation point wrong, it won't work. I type in a browser like gibberish and it pulls up the things that it knew intuitively what I was looking for. I can't type for the life of me on these little keyboards. So I'm always got like A, B, C, G, X, whatever. And the abstraction figures out what I was trying to find and gives me,
Right.
suggestions. You don't have that command line interface. And until crypto starts thinking like that and is more intuitive for the everyday person, you're not going to get everyday users. And to me, I think you're
Right.
right. We have to really work on the abstraction. I know as working on our project, trust me, I am 100% behind you, but we got to get the developers out, right? We got to get more people working and helping us build that, because I certainly want that. I see it. I don't have the manpower to build everything I want to build like right now or yesterday,
Right.
but I do agree that I think the projects that are really end user focused, they're not only trying to solve a problem, but they're trying to solve a problem in a very convenient and easy way for a big market. I think ultimately you're right. The projects that do that, the crypto projects that end up doing that successfully, I believe, one, they're going to be very successful financially, but I think also they're going to change the way crypto products are evaluated in the market.
Yeah.
So, a lot of projects that right now in crypto are just speculative assets, right? People are
Yeah.
hoping they're going to land and hoping they're going to get mass adoption.
Right.
But I think the ones that do are going to definitely, the first ones that make that happen. I think we're in an arms race, so
Oh
to
my
speak.
gosh. Yeah.
Think
I
about
mean,
it.
even to speak to that real quick, just a quick point. When you first came out with cryptocurrency, it was Bitcoin was the OG, right? But then Ethereum came and shook up the whole playing field, right? It's like, oh, like, and when I think about like cryptocurrency itself, like some cryptocurrencies aren't cryptocurrencies. They are platforms, or they're something to be built upon, but they are under the umbrella of cryptocurrencies. Like at the end of the day, most of these quote unquote cryptocurrency projects out there are startups. And with most startups and anything out there, 90% of them fail. Period. But that 5 to 10 that survive crush it. And not only go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just coughing a little bit.
Oh, there you're all good. I was mean just not only do they like crush it, like they build something in such a way that changes the dynamic of where the future is headed. So, and why I like Ethereum, it made a lot of developers come on and understand, like, oh, here's all of these different use cases. Oh, we have smart contracts, things that can be permissionless and do whatever. Like, oh, like there's so many use cases. Let me try to go build out this certain aspect of it. When you look at some of the projects that are coming on, and I do this comparison, and I'm sure a lot of other people do the comparison as well, as the internet, like initial internet, how it all came out, how it was all forming, and forming it with crypto. And when you look at when the internet first came out and all of this money just flooded the market and everyone was trying to become a web company, they all didn't make it. But the ones that did, the Amazons, the Googles, the AOLs, like AOL came out and was crushing it. Everybody knew AOL, but AOL didn't ultimately make it. But because of AOL, you had innovation that was created around it to make everything after it that much better. You have these early movies, the early adopters that build really great infrastructure for that time, and it is great and it works for that moment. But if they're not constantly innovating and adapting with the times, then they don't ultimately make it. And what I think is happening right now, or happened with the, again, going back to the initial ICO boom, a lot of these cryptocurrencies came out that were trying to solve a thing for this immediate moment, but weren't trying to survive. And I think there's a lot more projects out there that are building to survive, and the ones that do, I think, are going to be spectacular. So I just want to like really harp on the idea that some of these crypto projects that are coming are learning from other mistakes and are saying like, they did all of these things right, but here's something they did wrong. Let me make it that much better. And like, here's this new project. And like, it works. And like, we're getting to a point now where the technical debt is being paid by a lot of these first movers. And, that's just part of the game, but it's allowing these newer companies that are coming in, or even the companies that are there that are looking at what's going on around them and adapting and allowing them to build and move so much faster. And I think for everyone listening and your audience, one of the things to always keep in mind, and something that I've kind of pulled from a lot of the guests that come on my show, is as you continue to work and build and you're listening to your customer and everything else, is what can I do, or what did they tell me that if I had to go back and show them my product, that I shouldn't have to explain. Like if they ask me a question about these things, like in my head, this all made sense, and like I'm surprised they asked me that question. Like think back on your conversations and think, why did they even ask me that question? I thought that was very obvious. And if the answer is, oh, that's not very obvious, that is where your attention probably needs to be. And I think that's been like a really cool, just lesson that I've learned over time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, think about it this way. You know, the original way you got on the internet for the most part was dial-up, right? And those of us that struggled, you know, back in the dark ages, back in the early days in the 90s, we would never want to go back to that, right? And having to deal with that, like your mom picks up the phone and get kicked off the line. Mom, I'm on playing video game, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're good stories to tell now, but it really was clunky. It was hard. I mean, if you had to think about like back then, like you had to turn on your computer and boot, and then you had to open up your modem window and then dial the number and make sure your username and password were, I mean, now you just turn on the computer, it works. You don't even think about that. You don't even think about the connection. And now, you know, we have the wireless, you know, everything is wireless now, right? And Wi-Fi, and that was a whole other jump. Like, oh, I don't have to sit in my computer room now to play on the computer. I can sit in the living room and, you know, live tweet Netflix or something, right? I mean, things are very different now, even than it was 20, 30 years ago. And you know, I think I try to think about the future as well. And when we're designing Tusk and working and building this out, you know, we've heard this a lot of times, for instance, as a project, well, why aren't you a stable coin? I don't know if you hear that a lot. And I said, we don't want to be a stable coin. And people give you a hard time. And I say, look, most stable coins are pegged to a fiat currency. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, and we thought this 2 years ago, and I think it even more now, can you imagine having the value of your project controlled by a fiat currency like the US dollar in 10 years? Tell me what's going to happen to the dollar in the next 10 years. I don't know what's going to happen to the dollar in the next 10 years, but I have a good indication that they're printing so much money right now, and that rate of printing is just only increasing, will eventually drive that fiat currency to oblivion. I'm pretty comfortable in saying that. I don't have a timeline, but I would say there's a high, it'll catch up. And I'm not building something for a week. I'm not building something for a year. I'm building something that may be here in 50 years. You know, that's the goal, right? You don't build who builds a money that's going to be gone in 10 years, right? You got to build something that's going to last hundreds of years, right? I mean, that's, at least in my mind, that's what I'm trying to build.
It's going to be currency, 100%.
And so why would I build something on a foundation, one, I don't control, two, that's recklessly being printed and debased? And so that's why I don't want to be a fiat currency. I want our currency to get adopted now. You know, and I also believe, if you look at what was the point, why did people build stable coins? Right? Answer the question. That was a question.
Build stable coins to I mean, volatility, to make sure you could hedge against volatility that's going on, and make sure that at that time, if your Bitcoin was $10,000 and all of a sudden it started going down, you could at least save that value and you could buy back in at a lower, but to maintain value.
Stability, exactly. So the question is, how come cryptocurrencies are so volatile? Why not solve that problem?
Right.
And there's a very simple reason for that. Why is the US dollar not volatile for the most part? It's the most stable fiat currency on the planet right now, right? Why is it not volatile? And it's a simple answer. Because people are using it every day for buying and selling. Yeah. However, if people only use the dollar for speculation, it would be very volatile. Mm-hmm. So how do you solve the volatility issue? You create utility and you get adoption. And over time, it will absolutely stabilize itself and be consistent and hold its value. And so if your project, or a project that you like that you're investing in, does not have a strategy to get people to really use it, it will probably always be a speculative asset only, and it's going to be volatile. So to us, we're going to be volatile probably for the next 2 or 3 years as we grow. But we expect that with Tusk, that we knew this. We knew that was a risk. And we have some strategies to deal with that, at least early on with the retailers that we're talking to, which involves things like, atomic swaps and cashing out right away. So you're not sitting on it if you don't want to. but we deliberately wanted to stay away from being a stablecoin. And we felt that for the long term, it was a bad strategy. Short term, it might be fine. Long term, I don't think it's a good idea. And so, because you don't control the underlying value at that point, I would much rather the people in our community are essentially, think about, are controlling the value. So who's better if you're a project, right? Who should be controlling the value? Some government agent somewhere, or someone in a treasury department at some fiat currency, or some bank control the value of your asset? Or should the people that use it control the value of the asset? And to me, and to our group and our team, we felt that having the market in our community determine the value is probably the safest way long term.
Yeah, I mean, the market, the people, the community who are using it should be driving the value. Like if you think about what makes the stock market, it is perceived value. It is supply and demand. And it's very interesting when you think about like stable coins, and I was having a conversation about this earlier today. It can go one of two ways, right? And right now there's a lot of demand for it. There's a lot of money being fed into it. I think it's basically expanded into like a $10 billion industry right now, and it's continuing to grow. There's a lot of liquidity that is starting to enter that market. However, depending on what that is pegged to, even your quote unquote stable coin eventually could become volatile, depending on like what is your underlying thing that you're pegging. So in a lot of ways, yes, there's utility to it. It's practical. It can be useful, but at the same time too, you're still always going to be at some sort of risk, right? And for a lot of these, for example, like with Tuscan, what you have going on, I do think that by just keeping it, the value of what you're doing, it should be driven by supply and demand and everyone who is using it. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely interesting to see where things go in the next couple of years, and I think we're going the right direction with our project, but we'll see if the market agrees with what we're doing. And I think, but I think we will be. I'm pretty confident of that. But I think ultimately, pegging the value of what you're doing to something else that somebody else controls, I just don't think it just doesn't make sense to me. But again, I think a lot of people created those stable coins as a band-aid. And so instead of, creating adoption and focusing your efforts on truly getting adoption, they spent their time creating a band-aid instead of solving the underlying problem, is that, cryptocurrencies haven't been adopted yet by the masses. In fact, I would argue they haven't even been adopted by very many niche markets either. Right now, even Bitcoin, and I own Bitcoin, own Ethereum in my own portfolio. I'm not anti any project other than scams. I don't like scams, but I'm not anti projects. But I also see limitations in projects. I even see limitations in our own projects. I know what's ugly. I know where the warts are in our project too. But if you can't identify and be open and honest where there's a problem, or where there's an obstacle that needs to be corrected or overcome, you're never going to innovate. And that's the thing. And I think the problem with a lot of people, especially the maxis and the different communities, is that they're so sensitive to any kind of criticism that they feel that their project is above criticism, and then they get really ornery about it. But the fact is, if you can't point out where there's a problem, how are you ever going to innovate? If you can't identify those issues. And I think that's natural. People get tribal when they wrap their personal identity around something. I think that's also dangerous. Can you imagine if there were like Visa maxis? You're like, you MasterCard people are bastards. Visa's the real money. Think about how silly that sounds, right?
Right.
But
if
isn't that
what
we're
politicized? How our we would be
is that
so
stupid?
much trouble. Oh my gosh.
But think about like the PayPal guys are like fighting the Venmo guys on the corner, right? Think about how ridiculous that sounds in this little thought exercise. But that's what they're doing in crypto, right? Yeah. It's like everybody's got their team jersey on, and they got to go to mass on Sunday, pray to the Bitcoin gods, and immaculate conception and all this. It really does have elements of it's not only tribal, but it does have elements of religion. In Satoshi we trust. And I'm not, like I said, I'm to me it's technology. and it's software and it has bugs and the people involved have personalities and flaws. And ultimately, the most successful ones may not be the best technology. You know, I'm old enough to remember, man, I'm really old now, but I'm old enough to remember VHS and Betamax. I'm that old. And you know what? The best technology at that time didn't win. The
Right.
best marketed technology won.
Yes, it did. And oh my gosh, I mean, I did case studies on this back in college, and it still holds true. Just posted the best tech doesn't win, the best marketing does. And again, I'm going to say this again, the best technology doesn't win, the best marketing does. If you think about some of the things that we use every day, it has everything to do with marketing and how it was positioned and like why they made you think a certain way. Like the whole concept of like buying a diamond ring for somebody that you're supposed to use a certain fraction of your salary and like that's how much you're supposed to spend was a marketing ploy by a company. Like they put that in our brains. Like however you like the fact that smoking, like the reason that smoking became very popular was that the cigarettes company put marketing ploys out there to show how cool it was at all points. So like everything in like just not to go too far into like the whole marketing piece, but again, like podcaster that talks to a bunch of crypto and blockchain projects all the time and everything going on, learned a thing or two, and one of them in the importance of communication and putting it out there is that marketing and putting your brand in front of as many eyes as possible and making sure that your story is resonating with people the way that you want it to and in a way that is received from your ideal customer is so crucial. And if you're not spending time on that right now, I want to challenge you right now. If you're listening to this and you can be like, gut check, I'm not doing this, do it. Like this should be your focus for the next month. Like figure out how you can get that concise story together to communicate that with others and just test it. But it's great to build great tech. It is great to build something that is useful. I'm not going to ever take away from that. But if you can't communicate it, and if you cannot put it in front of a ton of people and they can understand it and then not only understand it, take action. Like if you can't, even if you're thinking it's the greatest thing ever and you tell someone and they won't act on it, then you have failed. And like, I know that might sound really harsh and like really like, who is this guy? But like, trust me, you could be putting all of your effort and energy creating the best thing ever. But if you do not know how to communicate that and do not know how to put that in front of others, you are failing. And that needs to be a focus. And that is something that you need to be refiguring out and putting out there. And it's never too late. You can start right now. And I just really want to just emphasize the importance of we are in a new space where everything is hard. Everything is challenging. And any initial conversation that you have with a non-crypto and blockchain person, like right now, you probably already know this and feel this. If you try to talk to anybody that is not in this immediate world and circle, you trying to pitch it is really hard and they don't get it. But if you can get to a point to where you can talk to anybody on the street and explain what you do very simply, and they're like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, you've won. And so if you can't like internalize and like can tell me that, I want to challenge you again right now to go focus and figure that out.
I think I can't agree more with you, Richard. I mean, it's true. And I think the unicorn is the combination, right? Is that you get both pieces right. You get the best tech and the best marketing. That's where your Steve Jobs and Apple come from. That's where Elon Musk and your Teslas come from. You have really, really good products, really good innovation that people really want. And you have the right amount of hype to grow it. You need both. You could have a Tesla. I used to work in the auto industry in Detroit. I'm from Michigan originally. And there's plenty of great cars that'll probably come out to the market that are going to be better than Teslas. I guarantee it. They will be. I mean, there's too many people going into that space. And once the U.S. auto industry and the Japanese auto industries decide they're going to go into a space, they really dive in. They're not going to come to the market with one line or one model. They're going to come with 10. And guess what? In a couple of years, they'll figure it out, right? They'll figure out really good tech and they'll figure out a way how to manufacture it cheaper. But the question is, ultimately, Tesla is really good at hype. I mean, who do you even know who the CEO of Ford is? Or do you know the CEO name of Toyota?
No.
No, but you know who the CEO of Tesla is, right?
Everybody knows Elon.
Yeah, you know the CEO of Apple, the old one, even the new one, right? Cook, the old one,
Cook.
you know, Jobs. Everybody knows them, right? You don't have those kind of personalities in those organizations in like the, you know, the other auto industries that have that kind of marketing and that hype like you do Tesla's. And so I think, you know, I think that's important to understand. And I think that any crypto project or AI project or any emerging technology project, you have to, you know, you have to have a good product, no doubt. And you have to understand that you have to have a good product, but you also have to be able to have not only the ability to put that in front of people, but you have to have, you know, someone that has a strategy to put it, and how are you going to put it in front of people? And that has to be thought about just as much, if not more so, than the technology part of it. Yeah. And that pisses off developers when you say that. Trust me, I've gone round and round with them, and trust me, every time I open my mouth, my developers whinge. I'm like, guys, I got an idea, because I do have a lot of ideas, you know, because I'm out there. You know, our developers typically, you know, are heads down. They're pretty. Most of the team is introverted, right? I'm like the guy with the big mouth, and you know, I'm out, but I'm also the one talking to people like you and talking to other projects. And that's the beauty of what I'm doing with my podcast, is I get to talk to other projects and see what they're doing, right? And I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. We should do that too. Or do it better than what you're doing. Right. But you have to have both. But Richard, we're getting pretty close on time. Before we run, can you tell people how they can get a hold of you and hear what you have to say on your show?
Absolutely. So if you go to crypto-current.co, that is our website. That's CRYPTO hyphen current, CURRENT.co. Go check out our website. We got plenty of content, educational content out there. We have our podcast that comes out weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. We have videos that we have coming out as well, educational videos on there. We have a newsletter that goes out every single day, Monday through Friday, part about artificial intelligence. That'd be really cool to go and get a part of. And then on all social media, if you just type in cryptocurrent, you're going to be able to find us, no problem. And we are always looking for really cool projects and people who are working on cool things that would like to share with our audience. If so, feel free to reach out to me through cryptocurrent, or you can also find me on social media. I'm Richard Carthon. I think probably one of the easier ways is probably my Instagram. So Richard_Carthon, that's CARTHON. You can find me there, and happy to speak and I enjoy speaking with people who are passionate and working on something in the crypto and blockchain space that are looking to make a difference. So if that's you, please hit me up. I'm happy to follow up with you.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I've really enjoyed our time today.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me, Rob.
Hey, this has been Rob McNealy, and we're going to have all his socials and stuff linked up at robmcnealy.com. Make sure, if you haven't, subscribe, mash that subscribe button so you can get more content like this, and many more interviews are coming. I am Rob McNealy. You have a great day. Thank you, folks. Thank you for listening to the Rob McNealy program. Make sure you check us out on the web at robmcnealy.com and subscribe to our podcast at YouTube, iTunes, and on the Google Play Store.